As a contractor, do you have a hard time ever saying no to people? If so, make sure to listen to this episode because we're going to talk about what might be behind that and what's something that you can do to make it a little easier on yourself. Hi, I'm Vicki Suter, and welcome back to the Profit Builder Unscripted. A friend of mine is going through a remodel on her house, and when I was over there last week, we were waiting for the roofing contractor to show up, and they were supposed to be there at 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock came, they weren't there. 9:30 came, they weren't there. 10 o'clock came, they weren't there. And I began to complain to her about, the thing with contractors is if they could just understand that if they showed up on time and did what they said they were going to do when they said they were going to do it, they would have so much business because they would stand out from everybody else. Like that whole simple thing about just keep your word, do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. And what she said to me at that moment surprised me. She said, you know what? I don't think it's that he doesn't care. And I don't think that he's lazy. And I don't think that he's irresponsible. What I do think is he has a hard time saying no. She said, I think that really his problem is that he's overcommitted. He doesn't want to say no. So when I said, hey, can you be here tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock? I got something else I need to be doing by 10 o'clock. He said, yeah, sure, no problem. But he didn't really, it wasn't like a commitment that he could actually keep because he had other commitments or he had other things going on. He was going to try to cram it in. He didn't want to disappoint me. And it was just such a light bulb moment when she said this to me because it got us on, it really started this whole great conversation that she and I had about the whole thing of how often do we say yes because we don't want to disappoint somebody, or we don't want to be perceived as somebody who can't do what somebody else is asking them to do, or that we're afraid that if we say no, that person will reject us, will not want to hire us, won't want to do work with us, won't want to whatever with us. How often does our own insecurity keep us from saying, I'm sorry, I can't do that? Now, if you're listening to this, maybe this is not an issue for you, and maybe you always show up on time, and maybe you're great at keeping your agreements, and that's awesome. But what I know is that sometimes there are people out there, including me. I'll say that there's times when I say yes to something, and I really should be saying no to it. And it really got me thinking, when do I do that? When are the moments when I say I'll do something that I don't really want to do or I can't do, but I don't want to disappoint the person, or I don't want to let them down, or I don't want to appear to be unavailable. And I think in construction, I see this with contractors, is I think that sometimes you go, well, if I don't say yes, that they won't wait, they'll go find somebody else to do it if I can't do it right now. And it's so works against us when we do that, because then it ends up that people go, oh, they can't be counted on. They're not doing what they said they were going to do. I can't rely on that person. And then they will go find somebody else. And it was such a great conversation. And I bring it up because I think it's good for all of us to think about, how often do we say yes when we really should say no, or not now, or can we do it a different time, or renegotiate an agreement before it's a broken agreement. I'm sure that roofer was going through such anxiety about the fact that he should have been there at 9 and he didn't show up until quite a bit later. And that how much stress did that put on the system for him? And that then he felt bad when he showed up. And then there's a whole conversation. He was lucky because my friend, she had a very forgiving, caring dialogue about what his issue was. She gave him a lot of grace. But how often do people just kind of write us off? And, I thought it was an interesting thing for us to talk about. And that I really wanted to share because I see this a lot. I think that there's a lot of times when we say no when, say yes when we should say no. And I think that there's this other thing of how do we maintain our identity as somebody who can be counted on and trusted? Because that whole thing of not being able to say no or not keeping our agreements or going, well, it was 15 minutes more, it starts to deteriorate our identity and reputation. And actually, it does the exact opposite of what we had hoped that it would do in the first place. And so, I wonder for you, is there something in this that you can kind of maybe take away that you can look at and go, hey, is there someone on your team who's like this, right? Or another contractor that you work with who maybe does this a lot where they just don't keep their agreements. But maybe they're just saying yes when they really need to say no, or they need to say not now, but later. And maybe that's true for you too. And just a few tips, there's a few things that I've learned over the years. One is it's okay to say, I can't now, but can we do it? Will it work for you if we do it this time instead? As opposed to being a straight up no, because, we don't like that, right? But could you just say, I can't do that tomorrow, but could we do it the next day at this time? Or would it work for you if we did it a little bit later in the day? So that's first of all, like maybe just letting ourselves have that. And then also when we know that we're going to have a broken agreement, when I know I'm going to have a broken agreement, one of the things I have found that's super helpful is if I know I'm going to not be able to make that agreement, is I renegotiate it before it's a broken agreement. In other words, if I said I was going to be there at 9 and I know I'm going to be at 9:05, I'll call that person or text them and go, I really apologize. I'm running 5 minutes late. I'll be there at 9:05. Now, one thing that's I think is super important, because I noticed this in other people, how other people, when they're renegotiating your agreement or telling me why they're going to be late or not going to be able to make it, don't tell a story about it. It drives me crazy when people want to tell me the story about why they're not able to keep their agreement. Just tell me, take responsibility, right? Like tell me you're going to be late and you'll be there at 9:05. And I struggle with this sometimes. I'll say, I want to tell the story about how come I'm not able to keep the agreement. But then I think it drives me crazy when people do that. So I'm not going to do it. So just, maybe a few tips. My thing that I'm going to leave you with about this is before you make agreements, know if you can keep that agreement. Don't say yes when you really need to say no, or maybe later, or can we do it a different time, because you're afraid somebody is going to reject you, not want you, that whatever your internal dialogue is, just understand and recognize it's ours. It's really not the other person's. 2, if you have an agreement and you're not going to be able to keep the agreement, renegotiate it or let them know before it's a broken agreement. I was going to be there at a certain time. I can't make it there by that time. Call before that time is going to be a broken agreement to be there and renegotiate. Let them know you're going to be there later. 3rd thing is don't tell stories about it. People don't want to hear your stories. Because it was so great. I used to work for this woman, Betty, and Betty used to say, a good story and no result does not equal a result. She used to say, so if you started to tell her a story, she'd go, stop. I don't want to hear your story. You said you were going to do this. You didn't do it. Just take responsibility for it. And she wasn't being, she wasn't being a bee about it. She was just basically saying, just take responsibility. In responsibility, I love this. So the responsibility is not shame, blame, fault. So many times we think that it is, right? But all responsibility is the ability to respond. So when I call and renegotiate before I have an agreement, I'm taking responsibility for, hey, I'm not going to be there on time. My apologies. Period. I didn't do what I said I was going to do. All the stories in the world won't make any difference to the fact that that didn't happen. A good story doesn't make it happen. All right, so I hope you find this valuable. Love to hear your thoughts. If you want to drop a note down below. If you like the content on my channel, please subscribe. I talk about all kinds of things from, just being a human being to leadership to financial management in your construction business and how to make a consistent profit. And if you know somebody else who would get value for this, by all means, please share it. And thank you. Thanks for being part of this community. And I look forward to seeing you next time on the Profit Builder Unscripted.